Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new legal breaking reporting video analysis update for the evening of August 6th, 2025. We've got 5 different legal breaking reporting video analysis videos for you guys, or breaking news reportings for you guys this evening. I apologize that there was no morning report. I honestly just got extremely busy today, outside of producing legal breaking analysis reportings to you guys. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into this first legal breaking reporting video analysis update by the New York Times, reporting that unfortunately a famous actor by the name of Eddie has died, unfortunately, at 88. In this legal breaking reporting video, ladies and gentlemen, is titled Eddie Palmieri, Palmieri, Latin music's dynamic innovator dies at 88. He wrote, ladies and gentlemen, just so you're aware, salsa into conversation with jazz, rock, funk, and even modern classical music. A new world music, one critic said, is being born. And ladies and gentlemen, the article reads, Eddie Palmieri, Palmieri, a pianist, composer and bandleader, whose contributions to Afro-Caribbean music helped usher in the golden age of salsa in New York City, and whose far-reaching career established him as one of the greatest musical masterminds of the 20th century, not to mention one of his great musical masterminds, one of its fieriest performers died on Wednesday at his home in Hackensack, New Jersey. He was 88. His youngest daughter, Gabriella Palmieri, Palmieri, confirmed the death, which she said came after an extended illness. From the moment he founded his first steady band, the 8-piece LA Perfecta, in 1961, Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, drove many of the stylistic shifts and creative leaps in Latin music. The group brought new levels of economy and jazz influence to a mambo scene that was just beginning to lose steam after its post-war boom, and it set the standard for what would become known as salsa. From there, he never stopped innovating. In the 1970s, Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, roped salsa into conversation with jazz rock and funk, and even modern classical music, on a series of highly regarded albums, including Vámonos Paul Monte and The Son of Latin Music, as well as with the fusion band Harlem River Drive. He also teamed up with thoroughbred jazz musicians Cal Chandler, TJADER, Brian Lynch, and Donald Harrison, among them, making essential contributions to the subgenre of Latin jazz. Mr. Palmieri's Almieri''s fundamental tools, he once said in an interview, were the complex African rhythmic patterns that are centuries old, and that lie at the root of Afro-Caribbean music. The intriguing thing for me is to layer jazz phrasings and harmony on top of those patterns, he said, explaining where he got his knack for dense and dissonant harmonies and his gleefully contrarian CONTRARIAN sense of rhythm. He cited jazz pianists like McCoy Tyre and Thelonious Thelonis Monk as inspiration, but the art historian and critic Robert Ferris Thompson, writing in 1975 about the emergence of salsa, noticed other influences as well. Blends avant-garde, GARDE, rock, Debussy, John Cage, and Chopin without overwhelming the historic Afro-Caribbean flavor. He wrote of Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, a new world music, it might be said, is being born. Juan Flores, a scholar of Puerto Rican culture, wrote in Salsa Rising, New York Latin music of the 60s generation 2016, that Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, had been the pioneer and prime innovator, driving the cultural movement that was salsa music. For his part, Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, was never fond of the word salsa. He described his music in terms of its roots Afro-Caribbean. He said in a 2012 interview with the Smithsonian World History Project, through the participation of Puerto Ricans and Nuyorican like himself, he explained it had become Afro-Caribbean and now it's Afro-world. By the end of his life, Mr. Palmieri, was a highly decorated statesman in both jazz and Afro-Latin music. In 2013, he was named a jazz master by the National Endowment for the Arts and received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Latin Grammys. Though he never graduated from high school, Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, was an endlessly curious and intensely intellectual man. He treated leading a band as both an art and a science, particularly after learning the Schillinger system of musical composition in the late 1960s. What I learned, it's specifically, what learned intuitively why it works. What I learned intuitively why it works. Or why it excites you. Now I learned it scientifically from what I was able to capture from the Schillinger system. He told the Smithsonian that has to do with rotary energy. That has to do with tension and resistance. One of his catchphrases was, "I don't guess I'm going to excite you with my band. I know it." Madman of Salsa. Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, considered himself an ambassador of New York's working class and Puerto Rican neighborhoods where he'd grown up playing stickball and dishing out egg creams at his father's ice cream parlor. An ambassador, sure, but he could hardly be accused of acting like a diplomat. He lived by his own code, tangling often with music executives or institutions he found to be unfair or dealing in unsavory methods. That could mean confronting one of the most mobbed up executives in American music over unpaid royalties. You're getting attacked constantly, one way or the other. Fights with the promoters, fighting with the record labels. Mr. Palmieri, Palmeri, Palmieri, said, "So I went through all of this." For years he refused to pay taxes to the Internal Revenue Service, embracing the view of Henry George, an iconoclastic politician economist whose ideas Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, had studied, that income tax was a legalized form of robbery. Mr. Palmieri later used his eminent reputation to negotiate successfully for greater inclusion of Latin music at the Grammys. The winner of 8 trophies himself, he served for years as a member of the Recording Academy's New York Board of Governors, helping to shepherd the creation of the Best Latin Jazz Album category in 1995. When that category was eliminated in 2011, he wrote a letter accusing the Academy of marginalizing our music with culture, and people even further. The category was reinstated the next year, but it wasn't just a reputation for resistance that earned Palmieri, Palmieri, the nickname the Madman of Salsa. He looked the part on stage, sometimes jagging the piano keys with elbows and forearms, lunging and crying out, broadcasting catharsis. In cooler moments, he played without moving his head or shoulders at all, holding his body threateningly still, as if stalking his prey from an arpeggio, arpeggio, into the air. Before long, he would be throwing himself at the instrument again, while remaining keenly aware of the ensemble. Leadership is part of Eddie Palmieri's Palmieri's Palmieri''s personality. It doesn't abate. Ben Ratliff wrote in the New York Times in 2005, reviewing a Harlem concert. Even motionless, he was all right. Rigor. Uptown Roots. The pianist who proudly described himself as a Puerto Rican of Italian descent, born in a New York Jewish hospital, who composes and plays Afro-Caribbean music, was born Eduardo Palmieri, Palmieri, on December 15, 1936, in New York. He was the second of two sons of Isabel Palmieri, Palmieri, Maldonado, Maldonado, a seamstress, and Carlos Manuel Palmieri, Palmieri, a radio and television repairman. Both were born, from Ponce, PR. When Eddie was 5, his family moved to the South Bronx, where where his father opened a candy store and ice cream parlor in a heavily Puerto Rican neighborhood. Young Eddie got to name it the memo. The shop became a hangout for young musicians, and while he was serving up sodas, Eddie also controlled the jukebox, playing the latest hits by Tito Puente, Puente, Tito Rodriguez, and Machito, the city's leading Latin band leaders. When Eddie began studying the piano at age 8, his brother, Charlie, 9 years his senior, was already playing it professionally. Charlie went on to study at Juilliard, Juilliard, and joined Tito Puente's Puente' orchestra on his way to becoming a popular band leader himself. In 2009, a 2009 interview with the Savannah Morning News, Eddie remembered Charlie, whom he had called his greatest inspiration, bringing recordings into the house of Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, the big bands, and that were happening in the 40s. And then there was always the greatest Machito Orchestra, the Afro-Caribbean, Cubans, which started in 1939. He added, so I would be listening to them at the same time. My uncles were very into folkloric music upstairs with the guitars, and that the brothers would collaborate frequently until Charlie's death of a heart attack in 1988. In 2014, partly thanks to Eddie's advocacy, New York City declared the corner of East 112th Street and Park Avenue, where the brothers had grown up, Charlie Palmieri Way, Palmieri, as an Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen. I had to find the place where we left off for some reason because the screen messed up. Here we are with the rest of the reporting. In addition to his daughter, Gabriel, Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, is survived by 3 other daughters, Renee, Eydie, Eydie, and Ileana, Ileana, a son, Edward Palmieri, Palmieri, 2, and 4 grandchildren. His wife of 58 years, Iraida, Iraida Gonzalez Palmieri, Palmieri, died in 2014. As an adolescent, Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, would take the subway down to Carnegie Hall for piano lessons with the concert pianist Margaret Bonds. In his early teens, he detoured from the piano to play timbales, the rat-a-tat kettle drums, prominent in Afro-Cuban music, in an uncle's band, and the Caves on some of his brother's records. But he returned quickly to the piano, finding work in groups led by local musicians like Eddie Forrester, Forrester, and Johnny Segui, Segui. At 14, he briefly led a band with the vocalist Joe Quijano, Quijano. Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, joined the Cuban singer Vicente Valdez's Valdes ensemble in 1956. The same year, he married Iraida Gonzalez, who would be by his side for the next 58 years. He spent the first 2 years of their marriage in Tito Rodriguez Orchestra, a mainstay at the Palladium Ballroom, the heart of New York's mambo scene. L.A. Perfecta. Taking a leap of faith Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, left Mr. Rodriguez in 1960 to put together his own ensemble. The next year, struggling to build a following, he borrowed $1,000 from his mother-in-law and rented out the Tritons, a small but popular club in the Bronx, for a month. He booked himself into the club multiple nights a week, performing his compositions in different small band configurations. He was partial to the classic Cuban conjunto format with a 4-trumpet front line, but top flight trumpeters were expensive, so he sought other options. He came to rely on Barry Rogers, an inventive trombonist he had met at the club. Who mixed doses of jazz into full-blooded playing. It became an economic situation. The trombone or the flute, Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, told the Smithsonian, "Then one night I was able to have them both, and I said, that's it." He had found his perfect formula. Mr. Rogers' trombone, the wood flute of George Castro, a small rhythm section featuring veterans of Rogers' band, and the vocalist Ismael Quintana. He called the band La Perfecta. Invited by the producer Al Santiago to record for his influential Alegre labeled, Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, convened a series of recording sessions, one with a typical Afro-Cuban conjunto style band featuring 4 trumpets, another with trumpets and trombones, and another with just trombone and flute on the front line. Somehow, the album still felt cohesive and a core identity shown through on all 12 short, catchy tracks. It was in the willy, deceptively lush arrangements he had written with Rogers the driving polyrhythms of a small efficient rhythm section, and Mr. Palmieri's Palmieri apostrophe S multi-layered Spitfire piano playing. The album Conjunto La Perfecta became the talk of New York City north of 96th Street, and then a landmark in Latin music. Perhaps the closest thing there was to an opening bell for the salsa movement. La Perfecta released a second album in 1963, El Molestoso, whose title translates loosely as the nuisance, Nuisance. Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, proved a crafty nuisance, Nuisance, that year, when the Palladium's management was refusing to hire La Perfecta. He booked himself gigs as at a dance hall across the street and stood outside before shows, daring concertgoers on their way to hear Tito Puente, Puente, or Tito Rodriguez to come check out La Perfecta instead. Not there, folks. Over here, folks. He wore down the ballroom's management, and La Perfecta was booked for an extended run at the Palladium. The band played until the ballroom's closing night in 1966. The dancers at the ballroom were known to be as formidable as the bands, and Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, came to see the couples that swung about the floor. As the enemy in a war of attrition, who's going to knock who out? He said in a 2012 interview, remembering his approach: "When I come and play, as you can, AZUCAR, the word who spread. If you intend to dance this composition, wait till after the piano solo, because you'll never make it." Azucar, AZUCAR, an energetic Discarga, DESCARGA, or extended jam that often churned along for close to 20 minutes became La Perfecta, became La Perfecta's signature piece. It was already a hit in the street. Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, told the Smithsonian by the time La Perfecta put the energy of the Palladium dancers onto wax. The track was released on the LP Azucar Lati in 1965, the same year as Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. Both played a part in challenging the time constraints of commercial radio, clocking in at 8.5 minutes. Azucar became a hit, and listeners called in to complain if disc jockeys didn't play the whole thing. In 2009, the track was added to the National Recording Registry as a landmark of American culture. While leading La Perfecta, Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, also forged a partnership with the West Coast Jazz vibraphonist Cal Jader, TJADER. They released 2 well-received LPs together, El Sonido Nuevo, NUEVO, in 1966, and Bemolita, BAMBOLEATE, in 1967. Those albums foreshadowed Mr. Palmieri's PALMIERI' forays into full-on Latin jazz, which he explored more heavily in the 1990s and 2000s. Demanding his due. In the mid-1960s, Mr. Palmieri's PALMIERI was recording for Tico Recordings, run by the infamous executive Morris Levy. Mr. Levy's strong arm techniques may have had something to do with DJ's willingness to play all of the Azucar, Azucar, in the first place. Whoever he had his hands on, they had no choice but to play it, whether they liked it or not. Palmieri, Palmieri, said in an interview with the National Endowment for the Arts, Artsworks podcast, Mr. Levy was already under investigation by the FBI when Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, frustrated by Tico's exploitative business practices, threatened to have his employers books audited. He made himself such a milestone that Mr. Levy was later convicted of conspiring with the mafia, turned over Mr. Palmieri's Palmieri contract to Coco Records, a small label. Mr. Palmieri's Palmieri relationship with Coco turned sour too after he said the label had refused to adequately support his vision for the LP that would become unfinished masterpiece. Coco released the LP anyway. It won Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, a Grammy, but he was still, but he still went to war with the label refusing to record for it for years. 3 years. Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, who took classes part-time at the alternative-minded Henry George School of Social Science, was among the first major salsa artists to put strong political messages in music. In 1969, soon after disbanding La Perfecta, he released Justice. One of his most lasting and ambitious albums, with the vocalists Ismael Quintana, Quintana, and Gusto Betancourt, Betancourt, delivering melodic chance over a large ensemble, hard-changing salsa arrangements, fights of AVANT, Great Guard, GARDE, improvising, and West Side Story, Balladry, recorded for Mr. Levy's label in an unheated studio in the dead of winter, Justiça signaled both a new level of social engagement for Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, and the start of a fruitful experimental period. Over the next decade, he released bold albums, including Superimposition in 1970, Vamonos, Pal, Mont in 1971, The Son of Latin Music in 1974, which won the first Grammy for the Best Latin Recording, and Lucami Macumba, Voodoo in 1978. In those years, what defined the parameters of both the music and the Latin New York identity that was emerging, where the burrito, BARRETTO / Palmieri, PALMIERI, Wars, the Village Voice journalist Pablo Guzman later wrote, referring to the rivalry between Mr. Palmieri, PALMIERI, and the stage, conga drummer and bandleader Ray Barretta, BARRETTO. Mr. Barretta, BARRETTO, was the figurehead for Fania, the top salsa label, and its famed Fania all-story Mr. Palmieri, PALMIERI, was the uncontainable madman, who never stuck with any label or single style for very long. So-called salsa dura, hard salsa, had become the nearest thing Manhattan's Uptown Street had to a soundtrack stirring elements of rock, jazz, and R&B into the solfeggio, Soffrito of Afro-Cuban Sun and Mambo. Mr. Palmieri's LP, PALMIERI''S LPs in particular provided the musical backdrop for an era of radical politics in the barrio, BARRIO, and he became directly involved in movements for Puerto Rican statehood and social justice in New York. When members of the Young Lords Party were arrested after draping an enormous Puerto Rican flag across the Statue of Liberty forehead, Mr. Palmieri, PALMIERI, played a benefit concert to support them. It garnered more money than expected, so he teamed up with the Young Lords to put together a tour of New York prisons. Uncle Sam lost. His work sometimes drew unwanted attention from the authorities. In the early 1970s, Mr. Palmieri, PALMIERI, and his brother started Harlem River Drive for a fusion project uniting soul, funk, and jazz musicians with salsa players with lyrics of social discontent sung in English. The group recorded a debut album titled simply Harlem River Drive that is now considered a classic, followed by a live album at Sing Sing Prison. When federal agents found copies of those records at the hideout of the radical group, the Weather Underground, Morris Levy got a visit from the authorities, and not for the first time. Levy calls me in, Mr. Palmieri, PALMIERI. What did you record for me this time? He remembered. In the late 1970s and early 80s, Mr. Palmieri, PALMIERI, was on the run from IRS agents, and tax collectors even showed up at his gigs, sometimes forcing him to flee in the middle of a performance. When they finally caught him, he was led off the stage in handcuffs, leaving his band to finish the performance without him. Brought before a judge, Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, said that, the $500,000 you're looking for, Your Honor, went to my children's education. And Uncle Sam lost. Eventually, working out a deal with the IRS, but in the 1980s, most of which he spent living in Puerto Rico, were economically dire years for him. It wasn't until 1992 that his son, by then working as his manager, dug up Mr. Palmer's Palmieri old contracts, as asserted his father's right to royalties he had been denied in all. Eddie Palmieri II, Palmieri, said he had helped recover the rights to about 140 songs that his father had written, leading to a windfall of hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. The younger Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, has established that his father's uncollected royalties from before 1992 might have exceeded $5 million. The 1994 LP Palmas was Mr. Palmieri's Palmieri' first to feature a frontline of all tried and true jazz musicians, including the trumpeter Brian Lynch and the saxophonist Donald Harrison, backed by an Afro-Latin rhythm section. The album was widely celebrated and marketed a regeneration for Mr. Palmieri's career, Palmieri'. He won back-to-back Grammys in the Best Latin Jazz Album category for Listen Here in 2005 and Simpatico in 2006. The latter released in collaboration with Mr. Lynch. Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, and Mr. Punete, Puente, shared the Grammy for Best Salsa Album in 2001 for their collaboration, masterpiece, opera maestra. Mr. Palmieri, Palmieri, never stopped performing and recording. In his last decades, he spent his efforts between Latin jazz, OCT, ET, La Perfecta 2, a revival of his original band, and the full-size salsa orchestra featuring the socialist Herman Oliveira, with his sponge-like memory and curious, critical mind. He also never stopped seeking out knowledge of the roots and shoot of his music. As he told the Smithsonian, I apologize about that, ladies and gentlemen. I kind of got Smithsonian in a tongue twister there. As he told the Smithsonian in 2012, I try constantly to get even more information and to pass it on to the public. Whenever I am able to relate, I do, because it's so important, our genre. I love it so much. It put the world to dance. Ladies and gentlemen, so long to Tech's dream job. This article, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, is by the New York Times. Let's get into it.
So long to Tech's dream job. This article is by Kate Conger and read by an automated voice. When Rachel Gray started working at Google as a software engineer in 2007, it was a good time to be a noogler, or what the search giant called new employees. At a 2-week orientation at Google's headquarters in Mountain View, California, Ms. Gray discovered a utopia of perks. The company's cafeterias served steak and shrimp, kitchens were stocked with fresh juices, and gyms offered free workout classes. Workers received stock grants on top of their salaries, a 50% match on their retirement contributions, and a Christmas bonus that came in the form of $1,000 tucked in an envelope. What also made an impression on Ms. Gray during orientation was that Google revealed how many machines were in its data centers. I saw how transparent things were in the company, she said, about the normally hush-hush information. Over the years, though, her experience changed as she became a software engineering manager. The Christmas bonus shrank. Employees were no longer provided a fire hose of corporate information. The company abandoned a pledge that its artificial intelligence would not be used for weapons. The budget for promotions dried up, pressuring Ms. Gray to lower performance ratings, which she said was stunningly painful. In April, just shy of 18 years, the 48-year-old quit what was once her dream job. Life for workers at Silicon Valley's biggest tech companies is different. Very different. Gone are the days when Google, Apple, Meta, and Netflix were the dream destinations for tech workers, offering fat salaries, lush corporate campuses, and say anything, do anything cultures. Now the behemoth firms have aged into large bureaucracies. While many of them still provide free food and pay well, they have little compunction-cutting jobs, ordering mandatory office attendance and clamping down on employee debate. It's the shut-up-and-grind era, workers said. Tech could still be best in terms of free lunch and a high salary, Ms. Gray said, but the level of fear has gone way up. I suppose it's better to have lunch and be scared to death than to not have lunch and be scared to death, but I don't know if it's good for you to be there, she added. A Google spokeswoman said that many employees had been promoted and that the company had changed its performance management system to better reward high performers. The company has introduced policies meant to encourage employees to focus on their work while also staying true to Google's goals and culture, she added. As the tech companies became hulking entities with workforces larger than many towns and costs to match, scrutiny increased too. Meta, Google, Apple, and others were driven to make changes as workers and the public questioned their power. The turning point came in 2022 and 2023, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, renamed X, and shed 3/4 of its employees, while Meta's chief executive, Mark Zuckerberg, cut thousands of jobs during what he called a year of efficiency. Google and Amazon also conducted mass layoffs. Many of the companies blamed the pandemic for their overhiring during lockdowns, as more people turned to digital services. Along the way, the companies became less tolerant of employee outspokenness. Bosses reasserted themselves after workers protested issues, including sexual harassment in the workplace. With the job market flooded with qualified engineers, it became easier to replace those who criticized. This is a business and not a place to act in a way that disrupts coworkers or makes them feel unsafe, to attempt to use the company as a personal platform or to fight over disruptive issues or debate politics. Sundar Pichai, Google's chief executive, said in a blog post last year, "Some would say the changes have simply aligned tech workers with the rest of corporate America, where employees are accustomed to fulfilling corporate priorities. But the shift in tech was compounded by the rise of generative artificial intelligence, which executives say has already made some jobs redundant." In January, Mr. Zuckerberg said he believed AI would replace some mid-level engineers this year. Mr. Musk went further, predicting last year that AI would eventually eliminate all jobs. "The tide has definitely turned against tech workers," said Catherine Bracey, the founder and chief executive of Tech Equity, a nonprofit that pushes for economic inclusion in the industry. Companies have even more leverage to use against workers, and AI is supercharging that. Liz Fong Jones, the field chief technology officer at Honeycomb, a San Francisco company that helps engineers find and debug problems in their code, said AI's effect on jobs was overblown. But that could change 5 years from now, she cautioned. Tech workers could stop AI from taking hold, said Ms. Fong Jones, a former Googler, adding, "But we're all afraid enough to go along with training our own replacements." For some tech workers, the change in the workplace was abrupt. Adam Treitler, 32, a human resources strategist who worked at Twitter's New York office before and after Mr. Musk's acquisition, said the company's moves under its new owner were startling. From the day before Elon to the day after Elon, it pivoted overnight from how do we improve HR management to what are the fewest number of steps involved and the fewest number of people needed to pay our employees, said Mr. Treitler, who joined Twitter in 2021 and left in January 2023. He now works for the jewelry company Pandora. X did not respond to a request for comment. Others said the shift had played out more slowly. Ava Sazanami, a designer in her 40s in Seattle, joined Meta in 2022 to make tools to help users with their privacy settings. The mother of two said she had felt empowered to help solve some of the tech concerns that worried her as a parent. Meta also allowed a flexible schedule so she could accompany her children to appointments, and LGBTQ-friendly policies made her feel welcome because she had gay family members, she said. But over time, Meta curtailed its family benefits, Ms. Sazanami said. In January, the company killed its diversity programs and social media policies against hate speech targeting LGBTQ people. A month later, she was laid off when Meta cut 5% of its workforce. "We're seeing right now why tech needs unions," said Ms. Sazanami, who is looking for a new job. "The current culture has disempowered workers. a Meta spokeswoman declined to comment. In an earnings call in January, Mr. Zuckerberg said, "We operate better as a leaner company. Some workers are leaving big tech companies to join the AI fray." Jason Yuan, 28, started as a designer at Apple's headquarters in Cupertino, California, in 2021. "It felt like a lucky break to work for a company that he revered for its design," he said. Yet, after the AI boom arrived with the release of OpenAI's ChatGPT chatbot in 2022, Mr. Yuan said he yearned to get involved. In 2023, he left Apple to start New Computer, a company that makes a personal companion chatbot. He hopes to work more speedily and make more money, as AI is likely to replace him in his lifetime, he said. "We're reaching the end of our economic lifespan," he said, adding, "There's a feeling of, I have to make whatever I do now count." Apple declined to comment. For Ms. Gray, Google's exhilarating early days seemed like another lifetime. "The work was not always easy," she said, "but the company's culture made it easier to power through." One day, she recalled, she and her coworkers arrived to find Nerf guns on their desks. When a power outage hit, shutting down computers, they grabbed their Nerf guns and broke into a friendly fight. "Google had such a glow about it then," she said. "There was an institutionally approved playfulness to it all. I loved that." "Now the future of the whole industry seems very shaky," said Ms. Gray, who is taking time off from tech. Mike Isaac contributed reporting.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have a reporting by the Washington Post. A reporting regarding Tulsi Gabbard and CIA officials. Let's get into it. I apologize about that, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are.
Drinking Milo's teas and lemonades is like running through a sprinkler on a hot summer day. The smell of fresh cut grass and seeing fireflies in the trees at dusk. That's because Milo's is 100% natural and made fresh daily with high-quality, real ingredients for a delicious, homemade taste and goodness in every sip. Find us in the refrigerated section. Milo's Teas and Lemonades. Delicious is everything.
You're listening to Gabbard overrode CIA officials' concerns in push to release classified Russia report, a news story written by Warren Strobel and read by an AI-generated voice. The Trump administration pushed to unveil a highly classified document on Russia's interference in the 2016 election after an intense behind-the-scenes struggle over secrecy, which ended in late July when Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard released a minimally redacted version of the report, according to multiple people familiar with the matter. Gabbard, with the blessing of President Donald Trump, overrode arguments from the CIA and other intelligence agencies that more of the document should remain classified to obscure U.S. spy agencies' sources and methods, the people said, speaking on the condition of anonymity, like others interviewed for this report, because of the matter's sensitivity. Gabbard, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Attorney General Pam Bondi have released a slew of intelligence and law enforcement reports over the last month that they claim prove that spy agencies' finding that Moscow intervened in the 2016 presidential contest to help Trump was a hoax concocted by the Obama administration. The Justice Department has opened a criminal investigation into Obama officials, and Bondi has ordered a grand jury to potentially hear evidence in the case. The document that Gabbard ordered, released on July 23rd, is a 46-page report stemming from a review begun in 2017 by majority Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee. It takes issue with U.S. intelligence agencies finding earlier that year that Russian President Vladimir Putin developed a preference for Trump over Democrat Hillary Clinton and aspired to help him win the election. Multiple independent reviews, including an exhaustive bipartisan probe by the Senate Intelligence Committee, have found that Putin intervened in part to help Trump. Two former CIA officials who led the intelligence agency's assessment told the Washington Post they stood by their sourcing and analysis. The House report is the most sensitive document the Trump administration has yet released, and details of how its publication occurred have not been previously reported. The document contains multiple references to CIA human sources reporting on Putin's plans. Such sources are among the agency's most closely guarded secrets. After the report was completed in 2020, it was considered so sensitive that it remained in storage at the CIA rather than on Capitol Hill. Democratic lawmakers and former U.S. intelligence officials have objected to how the Trump administration released the report, saying it could imperil future intelligence gathering on threats against the United States. I almost felt like I was going to get in trouble for having read that document, Larry Pfeiffer, a former senior CIA and White House official, told the podcast Spy Talk. Sources and methods could be easily inferred in almost every instance. I don't know if I've seen a document of that sensitivity so lightly redacted. The desperate and irresponsible release of the partisan House intelligence report puts at risk some of the most sensitive sources and methods our intelligence community uses to spy on Russia and keep Americans safe. Senator Mark R. Warner of Virginia, the Senate Intelligence Committee's ranking Democrat, said in a statement. And in doing so, Director Gabbard is sending a chilling message to our allies and assets around the world. The United States can no longer be trusted to protect the intelligence you share with us. One person familiar with how the report was released said it was first subjected to multiple reviews that included career intelligence officials and lawyers at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. But as the Trump administration prepared to release the report publicly, there were multiple versions of it circulating, some with more redactions to protect sensitive information, current and former U.S. officials said. Gabbard, who has led the administration's effort to relitigate the 2016 campaign, pushed to release as much as possible, they said. CIA put forward their proposed redactions and edits to the document, said a person familiar with the process. Gabbard has greater declassification authority than all other intelligence elements and is not required to get their approval prior to release. Trump then approved the publication of the version from Gabbard's office with minimal redactions and no edits, this person said. Until recently, Trump had soured on Gabbard over several public controversies involving her and her office. And twice this year, he publicly disputed her and the U.S. intelligence community's assessment of the state of Iran's nuclear program. It is unclear exactly how Trump gave his approval, or if he examined the competing versions of the House report beforehand. The White House did not respond to a request for comment. A CIA spokesperson said Ratcliffe strongly supports the release of the report. It is unclear what additional details CIA officials wanted to remain classified. Along with intelligence derived from human sources or spies, the House document makes reference to material collected by electronic eavesdropping, as well as information gathered by foreign governments and shared with the CIA. The Republican House report was compiled at a time of unusually deep partisan tensions on the House Intelligence Committee, chaired at the time by then-Rep. Devin Nunes, Republican, California, who currently works as CEO of Trump's social media company, Truth Social. Former Democratic officials described the report as a one-sided document that does not accurately reflect U.S. intelligence officials' work to unravel Russia's election interference. The report has long been something of a political football. On July 2nd, the current chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Representative Rick Crawford, Republican, Arkansas, wrote a letter to Trump arguing for its release. Crawford told Trump he had written a letter to Ratcliffe in March, seeking the physical return of the report from CIA custody to his committee, but had not received a reply. Ratcliffe later ordered that the report be handed over.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are almost done with our reportings for this evening. The reporting for this reporting is by the Washington Post again, titled "Trump threatens to deploy National Guard to D.C. To take over police," which, ladies and gentlemen, constitutionally, by law, he does not legally have the authority to do. Let's get into it.
You're listening to Trump Threatens to Deploy National Guard in D.C., Take Over Police, a news story written by Olivia George and read by an AI-generated voice. President Donald Trump escalated his attacks on D.C.'s right to self-governance Wednesday, saying he was considering federalizing the D.C. Police Department and bringing in the National Guard, maybe very quickly, as he continued to cast the Democratic-led Capitol as a place mired in violence. "The crime is ridiculous," Trump told reporters in the Oval Office, the same week that an attack of a prominent former DOJ staffer captured his attention and re-inspired his threat of a federal takeover. "This has to be the best-run place in the country, not the worst-run place in the country. And it has so much potential." Trump also said Congress should explore overturning the Home Rule Act, the decades-old law that gives D.C. residents some semblance of political autonomy, with the ability to elect a mayor and council members. "The lawyers are already studying it," Trump said Wednesday. Violent crime has been receding in D.C. the past 2 years, reversing a generational spike in killings in 2023 that rendered the nation's capital one of America's deadliest cities, prompted Congress to block revisions to the city's criminal code, and thrust the city into a presidential election cycle. On the campaign trail, Trump made D.C. an avatar for dysfunction, reviving past criticisms of local leaders he says are not doing enough to abate crime and uncleanliness. He has long derided the Capitol as a dirty, crime-ridden death trap and pledged to turn it around. This spring, he ordered the creation of the D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force, a vehicle for his long-held fixations on quality-of-life issues in the city, including homeless encampments and graffiti, and his broader mission to ramp up deportations and arrests nationwide. The president amplified his campaign Tuesday, sharing a photo of a young man, beaten and bloodied, who he said had been beaten by local thugs. A police report and people familiar with the incident identified the victim as Edward Korestein, known by the nickname Big Balls. A protege of billionaire Elon Musk, Korestein moved into new roles as a senior advisor at the State and Homeland Security Departments earlier this year, and is now working at the Social Security Administration. Musk, who helmed the U.S. DOJ service on Tuesday, called to federalize D.C. In the Oval Office on Wednesday, Trump again pointed to the attack, harnessing it as an example of what he views as lenient laws and failing leadership. "We just almost lost a young man," he said. "Beautiful, handsome guy that got the hell knocked out of him." D.C. police arrested a 15-year-old boy and 15-year-old girl from Maryland and charged them with unarmed carjacking, stemming from the incident that happened at 3 a.m. on Sunday. "There's too much of it," Trump said Wednesday about crime in the city. "We're going to do something about it." Violent crime is down 26% year-to-date in the district compared with 2024, according to D.C. police data. There have been 13 fewer homicides this year compared with this time last year. Still, 99 people have been killed citywide so far, including a congressional intern struck by a stray bullet on a downtown street, and a 3-year-old shot while in the back seat of a car with her family. Spokespeople for both D.C. Mayor Muriel E. Bowser, Democrat, and the D.C. Police Department declined to comment on Trump's statements. U.S. Attorney for D.C. Jeanine Pirro, the Trump-appointed prosecutor in charge of most adult crime in D.C., also put pressure on local officials Wednesday. Pirro sent a letter to city lawmakers calling on them to immediately reconsider 3 laws passed over the last decade that expanded criminal record sealing and allowed shorter or reduced sentences for people convicted of crimes before the age of 25. In 2020, as the city was swept by protests, Trump deployed thousands of federal police to civilian streets to contain the unrest. His administration floated the idea of taking control of the D.C. police force. A provision in the district's Home Rule Act allows for the emergency control of police through a temporary federal takeover. The law is broadly written. All Trump has to do is determine that special conditions of an emergency nature exist. The unprecedented request sent district leaders scrambling to head off what they regarded as tantamount to a government overthrow. To the mayor, the threat, real or not, sounded like a complete disaster. She later told congressional investigators that, on that day, she felt as if we're going to lose control of the city. She said it harkened to an ugly segregationist past of the district. The administration did not follow through on the 2020 threat, but it did invoke broad powers over D.C., sending the National Guard onto the streets and military helicopters overhead. The D.C. National Guard is the only National Guard unit out of all of the 54 states and territories, which reports only to the president. The unique structure means the D.C. mayor cannot directly call upon the National Guard for assistance without federal authorization. Jenny Gathright contributed to this report.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to fact check this reporting a little bit and do kind of like a bit of self-editing and editorial use, because apparently the nice gentleman at the Washington Post is getting this all mixed up. Donald Trump does not have the authority to federalize the National Guard, even if somebody like this skinflint bigot SOB gets nicknamed Big Balls, gets attacked. He does not have that authority. That authority is solely invested in the New York mayor and the governor of New York. That can get him in a lot of trouble. And regardless, Trump, you will go down. Regardless. Bet. You POS. You POS. You quit. You keep breaking law. You will no longer be president. You piece of shit. Ladies and gentlemen, we have another reporting. I believe this is our last reporting. This reporting is by the New York Times again, regarding the unfortunate execution of a paralyzed, disabled man who, by law, should not be executed or should have never been executed whatsoever. I'm not saying what he did was wrong, but because of his disability and because of his pacemaker, they should have legally, by law, turned that pacemaker off. You will hear in the reporting that he said he was in pain because of it. Let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen, and figure out the all the details that went on with yesterday's execution.
You're listening to Tennessee Executes Man After Legal Battle Over Heart Device, a news story written by Kim Bellware and read by an AI-generated voice. Byron Black was executed in Nashville on Tuesday morning after a first-of-its-kind legal battle over the deactivation of Black's implanted heart device. The state Supreme Court recently ruled that Black, 69, could be put to death while his heart device, which functions as a pacemaker and defibrillator, still functioned despite fears the device could deliver painful shocks to his heart to try to revive him during a lethal injection. Black was pronounced dead by lethal injection at 10:43
a.m., ladies and gentlemen. I'm so sorry about the temporary skip. The article reporting AI-generated voice will pick back up.
a.m. local time at the Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville, Tennessee. Department of Corrections, TDOC Commissioner Frank Strada said at a briefing. He spent more than 35 years on death row for the 1988 murders of his girlfriend Angela Clay, 29, and Clay's daughters, LaToya, 9, and Lakeisha, 6. Black made no final statements. Family members for Angela Clay said in statements that they had waited more than 3 decades for the execution and regretted that Black had not taken responsibility for his crimes. I thank God for this day, a day that was a long time coming. A wait that was 37 years long, which is too long. He brought this upon himself, Lynette Bell, Clay's sister, said in a statement read at a briefing after the execution. During the briefing, media witnesses reported seeing Black exhibit signs of distress, such as sighing heavily, panting and raising and lowering his head around 10:34 a.m. after the intravenous flow began. At one point, according to witnesses, Black said, "It's hurting so bad." Black's spiritual advisor replied, "I'm so sorry," and sang to him, touching his face. It was unanimous among all of us that he was in distress, and we heard him in distress, said Nashville Banner editor Steve Cavendish, one of the media witnesses. Black's legal team said it would seek an autopsy. Attorneys for Black had petitioned to force the TDOC to deactivate Black's cardiac implantable electronic device shortly before his lethal injection, arguing that it could prolong his death by delivering painful shocks to his heart to try to revive him. The U.S. Supreme Court on Monday refused to intervene in the case, rejecting petitions from Black's defense team. Tennessee's Republican Governor Bill Lee, who has reprieve powers, said he would not grant Black clemency. The courts have universally determined that it is lawful to carry out the jury's sentence of execution, Lee said in a statement. A lower court had issued a ruling compelling the TDOC to either deactivate Black's device at the prison or take him to a hospital shortly before execution. After Nashville General Hospital, identified by the prison as the partner medical provider, said it would refuse to participate, the state Supreme Court overturned the lower court's ruling, allowing Black's execution to move forward. Black has an intellectual disability, which his lawyers had long argued made him ineligible for execution. Court documents show his IQ is below 70. In addition, Black suffered from illnesses including heart failure and dementia, complications that underscore the complexities of executing the United States' graying death row population. This issue hasn't come up before, but it's likely to repeat in the future, Kelly Henry, Black's federal public defender, told the Washington Post last week. Paul Litton, who previously taught bioethics and is dean of the University of Missouri School of Law, told the Post last week that cases like Black's are an ethical quandary for medical providers. Major healthcare associations like the American Medical Association and the American Society of Anesthesiologists generally oppose their members taking part in executions, but some healthcare workers might be willing to participate if they can spare a prisoner additional suffering, Litton said. Even without the ethical issues raised by the deactivating the heart implant, Henry said that under current standards, Black would not even be on death row given his intellectual disability. Though courts eventually concurred that Black was intellectually disabled, they did not make that determination until decades after his sentence. The U.S. Supreme Court banned the execution of intellectually disabled people in 2002. Almost 2 decades later, Tennessee changed its laws to allow death row prisoners one chance to challenge their sentence on the grounds of intellectual disability. Black unsuccessfully challenged his sentence in 2004, using up his one chance at appeal. The state did not recognize he was intellectually disabled until 2022.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I do have to criticize the state of Tennessee for illegally, wrongfully, unlawfully, as I said, executing this man with his disability. As you folks heard, ladies and gentlemen, the U.S. Supreme Court banned the execution of intellectually disabled individuals. More so, people with disabilities. They had no right to keep him on death row, especially because the court recognized his disability. Again, I'm not saying what he did was wrong. I'm not. But, ladies and gentlemen, the state overstepped. And so did the state Supreme Court in Tennessee. They overstepped by blocking the order from the judge, which was legal and lawful. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this legal breaking reporting video analysis update. I'm so sorry that it went in almost 2 hours. The first reporting was a bit hectic and long. If you did enjoy this reporting, please firstly like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy. Secondly, if you would like to make sure that you're always up to date on all the things legal breaking reporting wise on the side of politics, please secondly follow me on my social medias that'll be linked down below in the video description. I'm on Instagram, Snapchat, Threads, as well as TikTok. There, ladies and gentlemen, you will be updated when I upload brand new legal breaking reporting video analysis updates to the channel. Thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys also want to make sure you're always up to date, please hit the bell icon as well as the all notifications option. The bell icon is located directly beneath the screen here on the right hand side of the subscribe button. Fourthly, ladies and gentlemen, please help me reach and achieve the goal of 240 plus subscribers. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I'm saying 240 plus subscribers is because right after we reach and achieve the goal of 240 subscribers, we have more subscribers to reach and achieve. Right after we reach and achieve the goal of 240 subscribers. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, please stay safe. Please stay positive. And always look for the points of light in today's unfortunate, illegal induced darkness caused by the criminality of the Trump regime. And always look for always look out for my next legal breaking reporting video analysis update.